Hollywood's fodder. American cinema consumes the globe.
My name is Colin Gazeley. I live in Bath in the southwest of England, and this is Hollywood's Fodder, a series of video essays where I discuss US remakes of non-English language film. Hollywood consumes cinema from all over the world and processes it to be repackaged for a lazy English-speaking audience. There's a long history of this going back to the Magnificent Seven and beyond, but often the results are not good. I want to explore the highs and lows of this process, and in this particular episode, I'm dealing with one of the better examples.
Origin.
In 2010, a film gained attention that, for many reasons, was unexpected. La Casa Muda, or The Silent House, was from Uruguay, a country without a large film industry. It was shot for the equivalent of $6,000, and it was a horror film, a genre that tends to be overlooked at festivals. Despite all this, it got played at Directors' Fortnight at Cannes and proceeded to do the World Festival circuit. There are two factors that might have contributed to this low-budget horror suddenly becoming a festival film. Firstly, it claimed to be based on a true story, something which often piques interest in an audience. And secondly, it was supposedly shot in one take. Both of these claims are spurious at best. According to director Gustavo Hernandez, the film is based on events that happened in Uruguay in 1946, but no confirmation can be found in records that any such incident occurred. Either this is the kind of urban legend that gets morphed and added to down the decades, or this is a true story, the same way that Fargo is a true story. I.e., it absolutely isn't. Saying the film was shot in one take also doesn't hold water. The camera that was used, the Canon 5D Mark II, is at best capable of 15 minutes of video footage at a time. So while the film looks like it was shot in one take, it uses the same clever editing techniques that most one-take movies, going all the way back to Hitchcock's Rope, have used. Despite these mildly exaggerated claims, a low-budget 86-minute movie that is made to look like it is one take is an impressive enough thing that it got international attention, and the remake rights were snapped up. The US remake was given to the husband and wife team of Chris Kentis and Laura Lau, who had micro-budget success of their own 7 years earlier with the movie Open Water. Only a year after the Uruguayan film, Kentis and Lau brought us the US remake Silent House, starring a not yet famous Elizabeth Olsen.
Plot.
A young woman, Florencia Colucci in La Casa Muda and Elizabeth Olsen in Silent House, goes with her father to help fix up an old house in order to sell it. In La Casa Muda, they are employees of the house owner. In Silent House, they own the lake house and are joined by their brother/uncle. The young woman and her father intend to camp in the house overnight, but she is disturbed by noises coming from upstairs, and after the father goes to investigate, he disappears. The young woman finds her father wounded, which naturally terrifies her, and she then proceeds to search the house for the missing key and hide from the intruder. After eventually finding a way to escape, she runs away and sees a little girl standing in the driveway. She gets picked up by the homeowner / her uncle, who takes her back to the house in order to search for her father. A Polaroid camera is significantly present. Not finding the father, the woman has to hide once again and ends up in a dark room where her only source of light is the Polaroid camera. In both films, this leads to what are, in my opinion, the only genuinely scary moments. Escaping, the woman finds a series of Polaroids and it becomes apparent that she was sexually abused as a child by the two men and has repressed the memories. There has been no intruder. She is the one taking revenge on her abusers. The damaged young woman walks away, leaving her molesters for dead.
Comparison.
In my opinion, Silent House is one of those infinitesimally small number of films that is a US remake superior to the original non-English language version. While I've personally always been a sucker for one-take films, and I was hugely impressed by the technical achievements of La Casa Muda, I had issues with the flow and the plot of the movie. Showing what Chris Kentis and Laura Lau did differently to Gustavo Hernandez will highlight these problems, but before I get to the things I think the US remake improved upon, a brief discussion about the things that are simply different. A major difference in the mechanics of the plot is that Florencia Colucci was abused when she was an adolescent old enough to get pregnant. And Elizabeth Olsen was abused when she was under 10. It's worth noting that this particular dress has been established earlier in the film when Elizabeth Olsen is cleaning out her old room. A nice piece of foreshadowing. The fact that Florencia Colucci was abused by a non-family member who has been using his house to abuse multiple girls creates a different dynamic as well. It becomes a narrative about the exploitation of the working class rather than the US version being a narrative about family secrets. Being from South America, La Casa Muda also has a healthy dose of Catholic guilt. Another thing I'll simply state for the record is that Silent House features a handgun while La Casa Muda doesn't. These are alterations that change emphases, but there are more changes that I think actively improve Silent House over La Casa Muda. The biggest difference between the two films is the extra characters that Kentis and Lau put in. In the US version, Elizabeth Olsen interacts with a young woman early in the film played by Julia Chan. Notice how even though these women are having a conversation, Julia Chan is rarely on screen. This technique hopefully will lead an audience to suspect that Julia Chan isn't actually there and is a figment of Elizabeth Olsen's imagination. This masterfully edited sequence from the end of the movie spells out for any audience member who hasn't yet caught up what's been going on.
You have trouble remembering, Sarah. You have holes up here. aquí. Did I? No.
Finish what you started.
No. Leave us alone!
Stop punishing yourself, Sarah.
Is Julia Chan a psychotic delusion? Is she a manifestation of dissociative identity disorder? Whatever she is, Julia Chan serves as a valuable expositionary tool. Without the extra character, Gustavo Hernandez had to go in a different direction for his exposition. After the audience and the character are aware that it's been Florencia Colucci attacking the men in the house, we see her confront the homeowner about her molestation and her forced abortion. After confronting her abuser, the camera shifts perspective from the third-person floating camera that the entire film has been presented in to this point to a POV of the abuser as he is dying. Arguably, the first time in the whole movie that objective truth is being shown on screen.
A nuestra hija, ¿la extrañas? Decíselo, está ahí. ¡Mentira! ¿Me querés? ¿Me querés? ¿Por qué no viniste? Te estuve esperando.
Estoy acá contigo. Estoy acá. Ayúdame.
¡Cállate!
Laura, llamé a tu padre porque quería verte. Por eso lo llamé. Necesitaba verte.
¡Cállate!
¿No te acordás?
¡Cállate!
¿Te acordás? Quedamos en hablar.
¡Cállate!
Acordate. Acordate.
¡Cállate!
Sabía que no podíamos tenerla. ¿Qué le hiciste a tu padre?
¡Cállate!
¿Qué le hiciste a tu padre?
¡Cállate!
Laura, lo mataste.
¡Cállate, te digo!
Sabía que era lo mejor para ti.
¡Cállate!
Escuchá.
¡Cállate! 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 ¡Te cállate! Me mintieron. Él me mintió. Como vos. Mataron a mi bebé. Vas a morir igual que mi padre.
Personally, I found that shift from third-person camera to POV a little awkward. So that is the effect of inserting a character for exposition, but the US version has another extra character who is listed in the credits as the Stalking Man, and changes the dynamics of Silent House significantly. In La Casa Muda, we only really have one moment where a menacing third party physically interacts with the protagonist, and one moment where an intruder is physically present. There's also a moment where the audience is aware of his presence. All of these moments have their equivalents in Silent House. But the Stalking Man makes several more appearances. By the end of the film, when it's all but confirmed that Olsen is hallucinating, the Stalking Man even gets a moment to himself. This brings me neatly to my next point about these two movies. I believe that what Gustavo Hernandez intended to do with La Casa Muda was to make a film that starts out being a home invasion thriller in the vein of something like The Strangers or Funny Games, and eventually morphs into a film about sexual abuse. If that is what he intended, he didn't do as good a job as Kentis and Lau did. Having so few moments of a physically present menace in La Casa Muda means Florencia Colucci is just freaking out over noises in the supposedly empty house and searching for a missing key where it could not possibly be hiding. It's slow, not very interesting, and doesn't really feel like a home invasion movie. In Silent House, the Stalking Man makes things different. His interactions with Elizabeth Olsen make him a genuine threat, and it feels like a home invasion movie. There's even talk of squatters using this holiday home, so a possible physical presence of a third party is established. Alongside these home invasion tropes, groundwork is being laid for the final revelation. Observe Elizabeth Olsen's reaction where she hears the sound of a Polaroid camera for the first time in the film. Even when she is seeking a way out of the house, we see some unnecessarily disturbing things in passing. The only real preparation for the revelations in La Casa Muda is a barely seen series of Polaroids that are quickly put away, and a ragdoll that recurs occasionally. I do admit this doll is creepy, but I don't think it does enough work to establish the directions the film is going. The US establishes the revelations better by both the father and uncle finding Polaroids they clearly don't want seen. There have been enough breadcrumbs laid that by the time the audience starts to suspect that Elizabeth Olsen is experiencing hallucinations rather than a home invasion, it feels natural. Kentis and Lau, in my opinion, managed to create a narrative that does work as a home invasion movie until you realise it's a sexual abuse movie. And that is helped by the structure and pacing. The best way to discuss the differences in pacing is to look at the events surrounding the discovery of the father's body in the two films. In La Casa Muda, Florencia Colucci hears a noise upstairs. Her father goes to investigate, during which Colucci passively stays in the same room. She then investigates herself, quickly finds his body, and proceeds to slowly search the house for a key that will let her escape. A key that it has not been established she even needs. In Silent House, Elizabeth Olsen hears a noise upstairs, actively goes to investigate with her father, during which some Polaroids are discovered establishing the final revelations, and after finding a reason to split up again, further noises are heard by Olsen, which scares her enough that she tries to escape, only to find the front door locked. With no escape, she searches for her father, finds him injured, and taking a key from him that she now knows she needs, tries to find the door to which this key belongs. Both before and after the discovery of her father's body, Elizabeth Olsen is actively participating while Florencia Colucci remains passive. It feels to me that Elizabeth Olsen has purpose and Florencia Colucci wanders aimlessly.
Conclusion.
La Casa Muda seems so much slower than Silent House. Adding those extra characters and tweaking the motivation slightly made Silent House the superior film, in my opinion. I can see an argument being made that Silent House is weaker than the original because it feels the need to add a character solely for exposition, but in my opinion, the lack of exposition is one of the major flaws in La Casa Muda. I don't believe enough groundwork is done to prepare an audience member for the revelations that the damaged protagonist of this movie is doing it all herself. In my opinion, Silent House is the superior film that fixes some of the flaws I found in the original. As I said earlier, I am a sucker for one-take movies, and at some point you could well be seeing a full essay dealing with the phenomena. But in the meantime, I have a couple of further Hollywood's Fodder episodes I'd like to do. This was about one of the best US remakes, and the next one I'm planning is going to be about one of the worst. I also have a couple of other ideas for film comparisons, which don't have anything to do with remakes. And the reason I started this channel in the first place is I intend at some point to do a lengthy video essay about Lady Macbeth. But that is getting pushed further and further into the future. But nevertheless, I am planning lots of content for this channel, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you might come back if and when I do create more videos. But for right now, that brings me to the end of this video, and all that remains for me to say is see you next time, where I shine a light on cinema, both obvious and obscure.
Ah!